My name is Owen McGabby and welcome to HYVA, which stands for HireYourVirtualAssistant.com. And what we do here is, we try and educate you guys, the audience, as to the benefits of making use of virtual assistant and outsourcing in your business. And one of the things I try and do is go out to look for successful entrepreneurs who have experience doing the same thing so that you can learn from their experience, because it's one thing when you talk about a concept, but when you back it up by stories of people who are actually doing it, it makes it even more concrete. And so today I invited Lisa Ann Pinkerton from TechnicaCommunications.com to come on the show. So go ahead, introduce yourself to the audience and let's get started.
Well, thank you, Owen. Thank you for having me on the show. I'm really excited to be here. So I started Technica Communications about 19 months ago, and we handle public relations, marketing, and web development for clean technology companies, also biotechnology companies, and internet companies. We're based here in Silicon Valley of the San Francisco Bay Area, and we have some solar clients, some internet service provider clients, and also biotechnology clients that we work with.
Definitely. And one of the things, I always try and make every interview I have with an entrepreneur based on one core topic. And today really is based on a question that someone else had asked me before, was how exactly do you communicate, and how do you maintain good communication with your virtual assistant? But who else better to answer that question but someone who is in communication and PR? So let's get started. So how do you maintain good communication with your virtual assistants?
With my virtual assistants, I schedule weekly meetings with them, and we usually talk for about an hour. We plan what they've been working on, what's coming up in the coming week, and how much time they're going to be able to devote to working on various tasks, because my assistants do other things besides work for me, so I want to know what their schedule is, and so we can both know what the expectations are for the coming week. And then we do a lot of email communication back and forth as well. So updating each other on what we're working on, and if we have any questions, sometimes we'll get on a call and answer questions. And what I found when I first started out working with virtual assistants was that I wasn't doing a lot of this communicating. And because of that, my virtual assistants were sort of feeling a little lost, or maybe feeling like they weren't doing a good enough job, or that they the time difference might be too difficult for us to be working together. Yeah. And I realized that all we had to do was just set up a few systems and really a schedule of when we're going to talk together, what we're going to talk about, because we were just sort of talking ad hoc. But if we both know that Friday morning at 9 o'clock we're going to chat about the coming week, then that gives us both a better idea of what's going on and how we can accomplish all of our tasks.
Definitely. And one of the things I try and do on every call is when someone says something, we also want to dive in as much as possible to really give some meat to what you're saying. So you said you figured out that you had to create systems. And let's dive into the systems. What were those systems that you created? And we can continue conversation on that.
Okay. Well, they're very simple systems. Maybe a better term would be processes. So one of them was really my asking my assistants, okay, so on Saturday, when do you think you can work? What are the hours specifically? On Sunday, specifically, Monday, Tuesday, what's going on for you? Oh, I have to do this, I have to do that, but I can probably do, a chunk here, chunk there. And what are you going to work on during those times? Well, I can work on this project A on Saturday, and then if it's not finished, then work on it on Sunday, and then also start project B on Sunday. So we both have an idea of what the expectations are.
Definitely. Are this your specific projects that you have for your company, or because I heard you say something that they don't only work for you? So
yeah, these are jobs that they will be working on for me.
Oh, okay.
So they have other clients that they work with as well. One of my assistants is also a teacher at a university, so she has to go teach class, or she has to create lesson plans sometimes. So it's important for me to know, what are you going to work on for Technica this week, and when are you going to do it? And then, so that's one process. The other process is for my assistants to email me at the end of their day what they accomplished, and then where they're going from there. So if they,
what do you find that does for you by being emailed every day what they accomplished? I mean, how does that really help?
that helps me to have a better understanding of where they're at and how quickly they were able to work on the project. And excuse me, do you hear my cat?
Okay. We make the interviews as real as possible. So sometimes we have babies or cats or whatever. Hey, it's good. So go ahead. It's
she wants
interview here.
Okay, so by getting the email notification at the end of the day, I get a sense of what was accomplished and helps me to better plan the next day and also maintain the expectations of the client. So if I was expecting something to come in because I need to send it over to the client the next day because I'm having a meeting with them and that didn't come in, then...
the cat needs to be acknowledged. So hi, cat. We're going to stop and acknowledge you now. Okay.
So
it's going to be happy now, so I guess we can continue.
Yeah, now she's going to go away. So she got what she wanted. So that helps me to maintain the expectations of the client and manage the client so that they are not feeling like we're unable to deliver what we said we were going to deliver.
Oh, definitely. And one other thing I was trying to find out too was, how exactly, besides email, is there other kinds of ways that you communicate with them, maybe using Skype? I'm just trying to dive into your system for communication as well.
Yes, we use Skype. Definitely we use Skype. We use that for a lot of our calls. And we use Google Docs for the documents that we're working on together. And we'll also email each other within Google Docs as a way of communicating. And those are the systems that I use. And then I also pay them through Odesk. So those are the three tools that I use.
Okay. So you actually pay them through Odesk. So I'm assuming... I know Odesk is the site where you go in there, you post a project, and basically they do a project for you. Sometimes it's a one-time project, but in your case, it seems it's an ongoing project that's been posted on there, and they're continuously working on the tasks based off that. And why did you decide to go through Odesk itself as opposed to any other means?
Because it's a firewall for me as far as the IRS and other legalities. So Odesk, helps you to, pay people and they handle all of the tax forms and the 1099 stuff. So they deal with that. So I pay Odesk and then Odesk pays the assistant so that if for whatever reason the assistant is laid off from another job that they're working on that might be a little bit more full-time, they could go and collect unemployment, and then I might be required to pay unemployment as well.
Okay.
They're not supposed to be able to do that, but sometimes they are able to finagle that. And especially if I were to stop working with a client or with an assistant, they could go to the unemployment office and claim unemployment from me, even though it's not a full-time W-2 position.
So aren't they working for you as independent contractors?
Yes.
Is that not the engagement? So
yes.
I'm assuming that you came across this information by having an attorney or something advise you on that, or
it's my accountant.
That's what I'm trying to find out. How did you get across this information?
It was my accountant.
Oh, okay.
So my accountant really liked the idea of me having this sort of third-party firewall that's actually doing the paying. So if there's any reason for the contractor to try and sue me, they can't sue me. They have to sue Odesk.
Oh, okay.
Because Odesk is the person who's paying them directly.
And the reason I ask that is anytime we go into something that is accounting or legal based, I want to always make sure that the audience understand that we are not giving any kind of accounting or legal advice, but it's based off what your accountant told you, and this is why you chose to do that. And what other benefits, I'm curious, do you have by making use of a third-party tool like Odesk?
Well, I really like Odesk for another reason, and like you can get the third-party firewall in place by using Odesk or is it freelancer.com or Guru, all these different virtual assistant sites. So they all provide that in one way or another. The other reason I liked Odesk is because each time if the virtual assistant wants to be paid, before they start working on a project for me, they have to log into Odesk. And then every 5 to 10 minutes, the Odesk will take a photograph of their screen.
Oh.
So what this provides for me is that I know that when they say they're working, they're actually working because I can view their screenshots. Vice versa, the assistant knows that they have proof that they were working, so I can't argue with them and say, well, I'm only paying you for 3 hours, even though you said you worked 4, because I don't believe you.
Oh,
so they get a guarantee that they get paid for every hour that they work, and I get a guarantee that every hour they say they're working, they're actually working.
Definitely. And it's two sides to this, though, because there's some entrepreneurs that I've come across that don't care how long it takes you. You just want to get the results within the time frame. And then there's those people that probably they know you want to get the result, but they also want to see proof that you're actually doing the work. And so I'm curious as to why that is important to you. I'm not saying good or bad, but I'm just trying to figure out so that the audience understands, depending on what, who they are listening to this, which route to go with.
Well, I mean, if it's project basis, I don't care how long it takes you, right? So I wouldn't actually check the screenshots if we were working on a project basis. I would just want to see the results in a certain time frame, like you said.
Yeah.
My assistants, I pay hourly.
Okay.
So, I want to make sure that the hours that I'm paying them are actually hours that they worked.
And definitely, is this work that they're doing for you based on something that a system you created for them on how to execute the work? So is it work that you know how to do and have done before and have created a system and handed it over to them? Or is it work that they come in as the expert to work for you for? You understand the question?
Yes, I do. It's the former. So I've set up systems and I've taught my assistants how to do the work that we're doing. So I send them forms. I'll set, when I'm starting somebody out, I'll send them, here's the template. This is the way you want to, build out what you're working on, and go for it. And so they'll start, and if they get stuck, they'll let me know, and then I'll come in and maybe type a few things into the form, sort of to coach them along, and then they might go back and work on it. So a lot of my assistants are writers. So we're writing press releases, we're writing bylines for clients, we're writing pitches to journalists, those types of things.
And this is where I get to the point where I even need to find out more details as to what exactly they're doing for you, because anybody I get on the show, they all have their own different expertise, and it's always good to give more meat to exactly how the VA is helping them within their own niche. It gives people more idea of how they can do the same in their business. So how exactly the VA is helping you in your niche?
I start my VAs out as editors. So the first thing I want to know about a new virtual assistant is how well do they know the English language? How well do they know grammar, sentence structure? Basically, how good of a writer are they?
Yeah.
And so maybe I write a press release, I send it over to them, and I say, proof this. And since you don't know anything really about the client because you're brand new, let me know if there's anything in this press release that's confusing to you. That's very important in the public relations field because you're constantly approaching people who have no idea who your client is. And you want to be able to tell them really quickly who the client is and why they're important in the space that they're working in. So basically why a journalist should cover them.
Definitely.
Journalists are extremely busy, and you generally only get about 15 seconds in the email that you're sending them to either grab them or lose them. So if I have a virtual assistant who's brand new and they don't really know anything about the client, they're basically in the same position as a journalist. So that gives me really good feedback. So I work with them a little bit that way, having them just proof what I'm working on or what some of my other virtual assistants have been working on. And once I feel that they have a level of comfortability with the client and know the product offerings or the service offerings, and they know the industry sector well enough, then I might, ask them to write a press release. And that first press release might take a long time because it's one thing to read about a topic. It's quite another thing to write about it. You have to fully understand. How so?
Yeah.
Because when you're reading about something, You're taking that information in, and it does make sense, but you may not retain it. When you then have to sit down and write about a topic, it's a different type of cognition that you're using, and you're using a bit of your own creativity to write these sentences, because you can't just copy and paste what other people have been saying. So you have to be able to synthesize information that you know and put it into a different context. So it's just a little bit more difficult. And so when a VA is ready for that, I'll give them a project that's rather easy, but it might be rather hard from their perspective because it's the first one they're writing. And then we'll edit back and forth. And then over time, there'll be a lot less editing on my end and better writing on their end.
Yeah, because I would think that, because, I mean, it's one thing where you have a system that is, do this, do that, and all that, steps, and you're giving it to a VA to work on. But now we're talking about in what you use VAs for, something that goes beyond just steps, but involves having them be a little bit more creative.
Yes.
And I'm sure there has to be challenges with that. So how exactly do you, first of all, what are the challenges that you have with trying to get them to be, creative and have their own voice and write the way you want them to write? And how have you be able to overcome those challenges, especially with this whole creative part of the process?
Very good question. The challenges I ran into early on was that I just wasn't communicating enough. So I would say we need a press release on client A, and it needs to say X, Y, and Z. And that's all I would tell them. And so the poor VA is like, oh no, what am I supposed to write? Now I say, we need to write a press release on client A. It needs to cover X, Y, and Z. These are the bullet points we need to touch on. In the first paragraph, this bullet point needs to be covered. We need a quote from this person. We need a quote from this person. Use this, this statistic needs to be in here. And I'll send them the template, and it'll have certain bullet points listed throughout the template. So they know they have certain milestones they have to meet. And that has been very helpful. So I've learned that I have to be a lot more descriptive about what I'm asking for. I think before, when I first started, I didn't want to insult them by telling them what to do. Yeah. I think I wanted them to feel a bit of independence.
Yeah.
But now I realize they would much rather me tell them exactly what I'm looking for.
So it's kind of like maybe when one is building a website or an app, for instance, where you have a rough sketch of what you want. So even though there is that creative part of it where they being the writers are actually going to be creative enough to put the words together to make it so that when they write it, it communicates the point. But you take that time to have a rough sketch of how the content is going to be like. So there is kind of a guide that you give to them.
Yes.
It's not necessarily an instruction say, oh, this is how you're going to write it, but it gives them kind of a foundation on which they're going to build their content and be as creative as they want, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and they really appreciate that structure.
Well, I'm sure, being writers, where you're hiring writers to work, help you do this stuff, there must have been a situation where they probably thought, giving them all this kind of information, I want to go write the way I want to write. How did you, I think what I'm trying to get at is when you come across where you hire somebody who feels, they're the expert and they know what they're going to do and they're going to do the work the way as an expert they're going to do it. How did you come across that challenge of them having to communicate what you want them to do versus them saying they're the expert?
I have, but ultimately they all know that the buck stops with me, and I'm the one who's ultimately responsible to the client for the writing. So if I don't like it, I'm not going to accept it. So I've had situations where I would send them web copy that I had written, and then they would send it back completely rewritten. And some things were good, some additions were good, other things didn't work. And so I accepted what I liked, and I didn't accept things that I didn't feel worked. And they were happy with that because they ultimately know that I'm the editor. And so there's that relationship. In the writing world, you have the writer and you have the editor. And editors, on the whole, are very, collaborative when it comes to writing. but ultimately it's the editor's responsibility for the finished product. They're the ones who are going to be held responsible. And so the writers tend to take a back seat on certain things. And so that's just sort of the nature of writing, and most people understand that.
And what have you found that really works to really enhance the communication you're having with your VAs on various projects that you have?
From my perspective, I find telling people that they're doing a good job goes a long way. When I was an employee at various different companies, I didn't experience that. And looking back, my bosses loved the work I was doing. But if you had asked me when I was working there, did they love the work I was doing, I wouldn't be able to tell you. Okay? So, and it's one thing if you're working in an office together, you can, there's more physical communication and nonverbal communication that can provide an employee with a feeling of satisfaction, like they're doing a good job, or they're on the right track. Yeah. When you're working with virtual assistants, it's much harder to have that nonverbal communication. And 80% of our communication is nonverbal. So if you're only working with 20% of our communication being verbal, then I find that it's very important to emphasize my gratitude and my appreciation and how well I think that they're doing. Because people really, there was a study. Who did the study? I don't remember who did the study, but they found out that employees respond better to social accolades versus monetary bonuses. So a place like PG&E saved, I think it was like $15 million in employee bonuses by switching their compensation model for the company to share its gratitude for certain employees for doing a good job, from giving you a paycheck bonus to giving you social accolades within your social network or your group, your peers.
Definitely. And I always try and see every now and then when I hear a concept, I want to always throw in an example in there. So you've talked about enhancing the communication by showing giving them gratitude as to you're doing a great job. But is there a specific example that you can think of that has actually helped in your business?
Specific example. Oh, sure. I have an assistant that I was actually...
We're back again. We got disconnected by Skype. It happens. So anyways, I was asking Lisa as to, give us a specific example of how that, given the virtual assistant, telling them that you're glad of what they're doing for you and showing gratitude, I guess, has enhanced the communication and the work that she receives or the results. So go ahead. What was that example that you were about to talk about?
The example is a virtual assistant that I'm working with currently. We've been working together for several months, but this is the first time I've given her a byline article to write for a company, a solar company, and they have a very complicated power electronics product.
What do you mean when you say byline?
Power electronics?
No, when you say a byline, sometimes
it's a device that goes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, the question was, you said that you gave them a byline article to write. I didn't even know what that was. I was trying to find out what you mean by byline.
Yes. Okay, a byline article it's when instead of a reporter writing the article is written by an employee of a company.
Oh, okay.
So you see this a lot in trade publications and in online outlets where reporters are stretched and they need help getting articles written, so they ask companies to write articles for them.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, so this VA has been very, she's known about the company, and we've written press releases about the company and that kind of thing, but she's never written an actual article, something that's about 1,200 words. So she started, and she felt like she was getting really stuck and started to feel a little panic, and that she wasn't going in the right direction. And I went and read the piece, and it wasn't fully developed yet, but she was going in the right direction, and she had all of the elements there that needed to be there. And I wrote her an email, and I said, you're doing a great job. This is right on track. Yeah, it feels short, but we're going to fill in the gaps. I've added a few things for you to help you along, and here's some more articles to read to get some more background, and blah blah blah. And the next day she sat down and started writing, and she felt a lot more confident. So for her, expressing my gratitude, telling her that she's doing a good job, and then giving her a few more pointers gave her more confidence to let that creativity flow.
Yeah, especially now she feels that if you can believe in what she's doing, then why doesn't she believe in what she's doing? So that I understand that point. And I'm sure there are challenges that you've had in regards to communicate, because you have your system for communicating with your VAs, but what do you do when the system is not working and for one reason or another the communication is just going haywire? I mean, has there been any kind of situation like that, and what did you do in that case?
Yeah, there have been situations where, well, I had a vendor who I was working with to build a website, and she was just being completely uncommunicative, and we were experiencing delays. And I was rather friendly with her at first and said, I would just love it if you could just get in touch with me more. Let me know where we're at. Every Tuesday I have a meeting with this client, so if you can tell me on Mondays the status of the website, that would be great. She didn't, so I ultimately ended up taking her off the project. I had another VA who was a stay-at-home mom, and she wanted a few extra dollars, so I said, here's a small project you can work on. There's no timeline, but it shouldn't take you more than a month to finish. And she started out working on it, and then after a couple of weeks, I was checking Odesk, and she maybe worked on it for 15 minutes or, one day, and then a half an hour the next day. And I was very generous, so about 3 months later, we're still working on this project, and I eventually had to contact her and say, I don't think this is, I let her finish one phase of it.
Yeah.
And since we came to that milestone, I said, okay, I think, I'm going to figure out another way to get the rest of this project finished, because it just needs to move a little faster. And she wrote back, and she was like, yeah, just have a lot of different priorities, and I just haven't been able to put as much time into it like I thought I would be able to. I was like, that's fine, family comes first, and no hard feelings. So
I mean, we always learn from, like, that was a situation that something happened, didn't go as planned, but looking back, what do you think you could have done to have improved that process, the output, or the results delivered by that specific VA? What could have been different?
Oh, I should have, and this is part of like what I was saying earlier, that I learned that I had to be more communicative. Earlier on, I probably would have said, I probably would have mentioned something that I wanted her to move a little faster, that I noticed that she wasn't working on the project as much as she thought she would be able to, and is this a right fit? Do you want to work on this? Is this something you think you can handle? I could have been more direct, and I wasn't. And so as a result, that project sort of is 3 months behind, basically.
So go ahead. Sorry.
So that's what I learned, is that I needed to be more direct, and being friendly is great, but ultimately I need to get work done. And if somebody's not pulling their weight, I need to let them know.
Definitely. And based on what you said when you hired the web programmer, or the person that was helping you design your website, it seemed that you had a way in which you wanted to communicate with them, but they had a different style of communication, of telling you how the results were, coming, how they were delivering the results. So I guess there was kind of an issue with a communication issue. You had the means, a style you wanted to communicate with them, and they had a different way in which they want to communicate with you. So my question really is, I mean, are there ways to mitigate that kind of situation up front to avoid hiring a person that has the wrong kind of communication skills that you want? Or, I mean,
Yes.
How do you think that situation itself could have been handled better?
Yes, the situation could have definitely been handled better, and that would have been, like you said, dealing with things up front in our first conversation, saying, I have a meeting with this client every week. I expect to get a status update on the website, even if it's the status update is I haven't had a chance to work on this. This is what I plan to do. I just need to know, what do you plan to do, and are you on top of it? So I just need to, as a client, I'm her client, so I'm the vendor's client, so I need to feel reassured, and then I need to take that reassurance and share it with my client. So if I'm not getting that communication from her, then I can't manage the expectations of the client. What I have learned from that experience, I was looking back on all of our emails, and I realized that the first email I sent her, it took her 14 days to get back to me.
Wow.
And this is the email of, hey, I've got a project for you. Do you want to work together?
Wow.
14 days later.
I have business for you, but 14 days to respond. That would have been a flag.
That's a red flag. Red flag. And I was like, and she said, well, your email was in my spam folder and I didn't see it, but now I saw it, and so it's not going to happen again. And then over the next month, I noticed that I would send her an email and it would take her about 5 days to get back to me. And I remember calling her and not really getting a response in a timely manner. So those were red flags for me. And this was before we'd even, she'd even given me the estimate, and I'd given her a deposit. So I've learned now to watch for these small signs. How quickly does someone get back to me? How much information do they give me in their email? Are they vague? Are they specific? When they say they're going to do something, do they do it? If they're not going to meet that self-imposed deadline, do they let me know? If they don't, and if I think they're still a good person to work with, then I have to be more direct and call out that elephant, because they know they didn't meet their self-imposed deadline, but they're not going to mention it, right? Most people won't take accountability for that, but we both know it happened, right? So I've been learning, because like I said, my company's only been 19 months old, so I've been learning through the School of Hard Knocks, how to really deal with people and get the results that I'm looking for, and learning that I just need to be a little bit more direct and a little bit more firm in things. And that's hard for some people, especially when you're working with a VA and you don't have that person around you, so you can't read their body language. When I'm in an office setting and I was supervising people, I could tell just from how they arrived in my office or how they sat in a chair. I could tell if they were unhappy with the work that they were doing or not. Definitely. When you're working with a VA, you don't have any of that. So they can be perfectly cordial and friendly to you over email or over the phone, and then be irritated with you all the other times. And you won't know that. So just calling out the elephants in the room and being more direct and talking about things that might be a problem is really important. And I think it's hard for a lot of people to do, because you don't want to have conflict. You don't want to create conflict. You want to have a good working relationship. And most people think that just maybe by ignoring certain things, they'll have a better working relationship. But often it allows things to fester and simmer until they boil over.
So basically, it's something going wrong. You want to dive in and tackle it as soon as possible and get it resolved. And you said something that it made sense to me, where you said 20% of communication is verbal and the other 80%, I guess, is non-verbal. And now we're in a situation where we're talking about making use of virtual assistants. So basically, they're not going to be working with you in the same office. So knowing that challenge up front, what tools and mediums do you use to kind of enhance that 80% that is missing because they're not working in the same office with you?
Very, very good question. I use Skype a lot for video conferencing. Anytime I can do a video conference, it's really important. And that can help a lot, just to see someone's expression as you're talking to them.
Yeah.
Also, you can see if they start typing and looking over at their computer, then you know they're not paying attention to you. So those are some things to look out for. I also listen for the language that people use. If we're on the phone, there's certain language that can be red flags as to how committed someone is or how accountable they are for what they're doing. So you definitely want a virtual assistant who's going to be accountable and who's going to admit if they drop the ball on something or if something's not going right, because you need that honest communication. So when people say things like, well, I'm trying to work on this, well, trying gives you the opportunity to have an out. So if it didn't work out, you're like, well, I tried, right?
Yeah.
So I look for people who say, I am working on this.
Okay.
And when my virtual assistants say that they're trying to do something, I'll call them out and I say, you know, what did Yoda say? Either do or do not. There is no try.
Yeah.
Right? That's a famous
Star
quote.
Wars or what?
Huh?
Was that Yoda from Star Wars?
Yoda from Star Wars.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Do or do not. There is no try. And it's absolutely true. So I look for those types of pieces of language that show me that the person is trying to step away from their responsibility or their accountability.
So what other red flags in the language do you see that you can discuss with us?
It's a very good question, and so I need to think of what are the others.
It's okay. I mean, because this interview is as real as possible, and we just having a conversation. So I mean, but also I guess one other thing I want to to help add more salt to the concept you just explained was: is there any example that you can give us as to where you notice some kind of red flag, where you're actually verbally communicating with any of your VAs or?
I look for when people will disagree with what I'm saying in an aggressive way. So if someone has a disagreement with an opinion that I've put out, that's fine. I don't really care. I'm not that attached to my opinions, right? I'm always open to collaboration and making something as good as it can be. But there's a difference between offering a suggestion and disagreeing in an aggressive way or a negative way. And so I listen for those types of red flags. Other things are when people, like the word but automatically negates just anything you said before. So I also look for those types of things. Where are they using the word but? And I'll encourage them to say and instead of but. And it changes the dynamic of the conversation. It becomes more inclusive. Let's see, what are some others?
I like that point you said, because I think I read that somewhere where you should and just when you say something, or maybe when I'm texting or writing something like an email and I want to say but, immediately I start thinking I got to change that but to and. How best can I put an and in there? And just by thinking of it, it's the exercise that gets you to start thinking, okay, maybe how can I find a solution? I guess the and helps you towards a solution.
Yes, it does. And for both people, it shows that I'm not disagreeing with you, but here's another point to think about. So I'm not negating your thoughts, and there's something else we could be looking at. All of this is called hypnotic languaging or neurolinguistic programming. So when people might be interested in learning more about neurolinguistic programming if they're going to be working with virtual assistants, because you're only dealing with the verbal on many levels. So knowing what those words are that are red flags, and also understanding how you can best communicate with someone verbally could be very useful.
Wow, I really enjoyed this interview because we've really given this whole idea of communication a whole additional meat that you don't really get when you listen to other interviews, and that's why I said I had to get you on here to talk about how best to communicate with the virtual assistant. And just in case anyone who's listened to this interview who's probably thinking of maybe it's high time I go get a virtual assistant, but they're probably thinking I might have issues because they're not working in the same office with me, especially communicating with them. What is that one thing, as many possible things that you can think of that you want to leave with them to encourage them with that process to move forward?
I think the most important thing to pay attention to, if you're not going to pay attention to anything else, is what are the expectations. Letting someone know what your expectations are of them, and also finding out what their expectations are of you. Most VAs don't actually think about what their expectations are of their employer, And it's only after expectations aren't being met that the VA becomes starts to feel some negative emotion towards the employer, maybe a little bitterness, maybe a little resentment, whatever it might be.
So if the VA is not thinking about that, sorry to cut you, but when I hear something, I want to always dive in. So if the VA is not thinking of their own expectation of you up front, how do you, as the person who's giving them the contract to work for you, how do you get or get that information from them?
You have to ask them. You have to ask, what are your expectations with this position? And if they're like, well, I don't know, I expect to do work and get paid. Okay, great. How about working together? What do you expect from me? Do you like me to be more communicative? Do you want me to set up expectations and say, this is what I want, this is the time that I want it? Or are you someone who likes to be less process-oriented and more options-oriented? So I can say, well, here are the 3 things we need to work on. Just go ahead and pick one first. People are different. I'm very process-oriented. I want you to tell me the first thing I need to do, and then the second thing, and then the third thing. My boyfriend is very options-oriented. He doesn't want to start at A. He wants to go to B, and then maybe over to F, and then over to, he's all over the place, and that's just how his mind works. So you can ask these questions of your virtual assistant. How do you best like to communicate? Would you rather me call you, or would you rather me email you? Is it okay if I contact you on Skype, even though your little icon might say that you're inactive, right? Yeah. Is that all right? Does that bother you? All of these things. Sometimes VAs need some coaxing. How late is it? How late is too late for me to contact you? How much notice do you need to work on a project? If I have something that needs to be done in 3 hours, can I contact you and get you on it? Or do you want 12 hours notice? These are the things that most VAs don't think about, but it makes working together much easier because everybody understands what the expectations are and how each person likes to work together. And so the communication becomes a lot easier.
Wow. Thank you very much, Lisa, for coming on the interview. I really appreciate it. And how best can any of the audience members listening to this, how can they get a hold of you?
They can go to my website, www.technicacommunications.com. Technica is spelled T-E-E-C-H-N-I-C-A, communications. You can find contact information for me on that website. They can also follow me on Twitter at Lisa Pinkerton. Yeah, that's what it is, Lisa Pinkerton. Also, you can find me Lisa Pinkerton on LinkedIn and Facebook. I'm very easy to find.
Thank you very much. As well, you can always just Google her name and hopefully,
right.
I mean, definitely, I'm sure if you Google the name, you'll get her. With all being on Facebook, LinkedIn, and all that, you will definitely find her on Google. So thank you very much for doing the interview.
Oh, thank you very much for having me on. This has been great.
So welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I really want to know what exactly you think. I mean, if I suck and if I'm not doing a good job, I want to know, because by your input and your comments, your suggestions, your feedback, that's how I'm going to improve on the entire package of what I'm sharing with you. I really want to improve so that you know that your time is well spent when you watch my videos. And if I do good on interviews, and if you like certain things I do, please let me know so I can even improve upon that as well. And I want to thank you really, because your time is well spent, and I mean, your time is important to me, and I want to make sure that I continuously put this information in front of you. So I want you to join my community. And in order to do that, you need to click on the link that says get the free ebook, enter in your name and email, and you will receive as a gift from me my free ebook titled The Entrepreneur's Guide to Running a Business in the Cloud. The reason I do that is because I want to share with you that information. You can check it out and make use of it in your business. In the same vein, I will be sending you email updates every time I have new blog posts, as well as if I have new stuff that is not even on the blog, I want to share with you. That way we can stay in contact. One more thing, before you go, I want to also let you know that if you are really serious about finding, hiring, training, and even working with virtual assistants, if right now you want to get that started, why don't you sign up for my free webinar where I share everything about the entire process. And you can get to do that by clicking on the link on the very top of my blog where it says sign up for the free webinar. Again, thanks for watching the video, and I hope to see you next time.